The world is changing all the time, so where you're born, where you're brought up, is only a small part of your life. It's what you do with your life afterwards, I think, that matters. If I have a hometown, my hometown will be the town I grew up in as a boy, which is in Ipoh in Malaysia. But otherwise, I've worked in so many different countries, lived in so many different countries. My life has always been associated with universities. I went to university in 1947, and to this day, I have never left a university. I enjoy living and working within campuses. This is a life that I find very satisfying because I'm learning all the time. And I try and teach what I learn. I want to share what I know with other people. I never set out to be a historian. I wanted to be a writer. But I think quite young, I realized that I was not good enough to be a good writer. Then I looked for other things to study. Then I found that learning about the past helped me to understand the present. That's how I began. I thought it was a very interesting opportunity. This is in 1985. I was in Australia at the time. But of course, before that, I had some experience of Hong Kong U through the fact that I was invited to join the University Grants Committee, attending meetings in Hong Kong U, in Hong Kong as well as in UK, talking about the future of the universities. And I guess some of the people in Hong Kong U had met me. And when they did not find someone suitable from the people who responded to the advertisement, maybe somebody thought of me and asked me whether I'd be interested. I had never thought about it, but when they asked me, it was very tempting. First of all, I do feel something for Hong Kong. By that time, I felt something for Hong Kong. I cared for the university, and I had friends there, and I understood the system, because the system was part of the Commonwealth University system, which I grew up in. But I also was fascinated by the idea that following the agreement, Hong Kong would go back to China in 1997. So I said, well, I would like to see what happens and what can I do for Hong Kong, to the university, to make sure that its position is safe and protected and can grow from the return to China. I think everybody, for at least 3 years after the agreement, before I arrived, were already thinking what will happen with the one country, two systems. How to devise the set of rules to make sure that the transition will take place smoothly, and how much of the administration of Hong Kong can be preserved after the return to China. I think these are the things that are very much on people's minds. I had the impression that among the people I knew, the people I talked to, people were on the one hand very full of expectations and hope, but also uncertainty, some anxiety, and in some cases even some fear that things will go wrong. I feel very strongly about this because when it happened, our Hong Kong U students, the student union leaders, several of them were in Beijing, were in Tiananmen. They went up. They were very idealistic, and they had collected a lot of money, donations from everywhere, and I think they took the money with them. We didn't interfere. This is their decision. It's the students' union leaders decided to go, but we were worried about that because already when they went, it was I think on June the 2nd or 2 or 3 days before the breakdown of relations. When June 4th happened, they were still up there, and we lost contact for several days. We didn't know what happened. We were very fearful of what would happen to them, and we tried to contact their family. We were very worried they contacted us. So I went through several days of a real anxiety and fear for them. So finally they contacted us, so they came back. Everybody was safe, but you can see how tense it was. The day after June 4th, purely by coincidence, I was invited to speak at some graduation ceremony or something to do with the end of the academic year. And I remember the moment I started to mention the fact that our students were involved in this, tears came to my eyes. I couldn't help myself. Then we had another problem. June 4th was a weekend, was just before our Hong Kong U examinations started. So the Students' Union came to see me in the middle of the night to ask for a postponement of the exams. Now this was a very difficult matter, this academic matter. So I had all my top senior university staff in my house actually at night. We talked till about 3 o'clock in the morning to discuss what to do, because their students' argument was thousands of students were having a vigil in Victoria Park to show their support for the students at June 4th. And the whole weekend, nobody studied. They forgot about the examination starting on Monday. So that Saturday night, they came to ask me to postpone the whole exam for 1 week. We couldn't see how we could do that. But we came to a compromise finally, because the students pleaded, because many of the students were caught. I would change 2 days. The first 2 days would be postponed to the end. Then we start on Wednesday instead of Monday. Because we came to that agreement, we had to go to all the radio and television. We rang them up to tell them to announce this to everybody. Not everybody was happy, so we had a lot of follow-up problems from that postponement of the exam. So you can see there were many things happening which makes those few days very unforgettable for me. But it was much worse for all the students involved. I could see that. June 4th in 1989 was a disappointment to many people. It was very important in affecting how the Hong Kong people felt about the PRC. The sense of disappointment or disillusionment was very strong. But in a way, if you take a longer view of Hong Kong history, just as important, if not more important, was the agreement of 1984. That was, to me, historically, the big turning point. Clear cut. Hong Kong will return to China in 1997. Now that, every Hong Kong person will be affected by that. I think the idea of one country, two systems, in practice is very difficult to know exactly what the balance should be. Should we place the emphasis on two systems or on one country? It was not settled in the basic law, because there were people who took one country to be first, two systems to be secondary. Other people said, no, two systems was to protect Hong Kong and must be primary. One country is just nominal, correctly respected, but it's really to protect the two systems. I think to most Hong Kongan, the balance must be to preserve the two systems. But to people in Beijing, I don't think they really understood that. They wanted to preserve it because it's their interest. China benefited a lot from the two systems. But on the question of democracy, they were not very clear about that. I think they misled the Hong Kong people, and Hong Kong people had too high expectations. So I think there was an imbalance there which created many, many problems for both sides. And the Chinese, of course, don't really want democracy. And that was quite clear from the beginning. Over the years, the management of these difficult issues made the relations more and more distrustful of each other. If Hong Kong is not as valuable as it used to be, then should everything else remain the same? Because in a way, the basic law is to protect Hong Kong's two systems in order to benefit China. I mean, from the point of view of China. The rise of China physically meant more and more things are happening in China itself and less dependent on Hong Kong. That was probably inevitable. And then in every other respect, except for financial services, technology, entrepreneurship, investments and so on, China is doing very much better now than ever. And all those strengths of Hong Kong's can no longer match those of China. And the speed at which it is growing, Hong Kong will find it very difficult even to keep up. Only the financial services makes it still invaluable to Hong Kong with all their new initiatives. But again, even that, is it as important as it used to be? It's hard to say.